My brain says this, try this.
The St. Louis Cardinals don't know what an infield fly is, and I guarantee they know what an infield fly is.
And he struggled mightily, and I think that becomes an issue because now he's so criticized.
Talking
Overfluff.
overfluff. Too much fluff.
I think so.
Well, we're going to talk about it. Welcome, everybody, to the Hitting Zone podcast. That's where we take tough subjects and we crush them. And if you like what we do, I need you to go follow me over there on Instagram at _MTS Performance. And on X at the Hitting Zone STL. It's Hitting Zone STL with a capital H, Z, and STL. And on TikTok, again, that's where I'm doing a lot of work lately, is on the TikTok channel. I've had a lot of success over there, so that's a big follow for us. I'm trying to get to 1,000. I just got over 500, so make sure that you go over there and give a follow, especially if you're they allow a little younger athlete to go over there. So if you're that 14-year-old, to high school age level, it's a great place for you to see kind of what we do over there at the Hitting Zone. Game 7 baseball, just got into 3 tournaments with my 9U team. They have a massive support for Youth Baseball Midwest for the Hitting Zone. They have their schedules out. It's a pretty big schedule, so make sure you go check them out. They got several tournaments this year down in Branson and Lake of the Ozarks, so make sure if you're looking to travel, want to stay close to home, that's a great place to go to. Prime Sports Midwest with 3 locations. One of them is still closed in St. Peter's. Fenton and Chesterfield are open for your business, and plus you can order your gear online if you need to. Youth Baseball Midwest, the YBM Club, now live. It's got exclusive content. You're going to get content that I've been on there a few times with rankings, breakdowns, dad coaches stuff, player spotlights, and of course some of the early access to fun things that will be happening. But you have to be a member to find out what those that cool stuff that's on there that we have. Legacy member pricing is available to you. Visit youthbaseballmidwest.com. Make sure you click the YBM Club tab to sign up. And today I'm from home. I'm a little under the weather, so I wanted to stay out of the studio with other podcasters coming in. And so I'm hanging out at home today, so I apologize for that. But I have who I never would have thought this would have happened, to become pretty good friends with this person on the screen with me, and Jason. It started over emails, a couple of emails actually. I don't think I responded maybe to the first 2 or 3, and I think I got another one that was like, "Hey man, just tell me yes or no, and let me move on with my days about something specific." And so naturally, I responded, and we kept having conversations. And I tell you that the conversation led to some good, healthy things. Jason does have a product that he was trying to sell to me that I end up buying in Kilo Gear, which is wearable weights basically. And I have some of these things that have helped me in my hips and my back, and it became much bigger because I found out that he's a man of faith. I didn't even know that he was a professional athlete yet. I didn't even look him up, anything of that nature. And he treated me just like a normal human being. And so we became friends. And then we've gotten really detailed. So, Jason, if you can introduce yourself to the community here in St. Louis.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's a pleasure to be here with all your listeners. So, I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. I went against the grain in Ohio and went to Michigan for college at the University of Michigan. And much to a lot of people's dismay, and had a great career there, and went on to play 6.5 years of pro ball with 4 different major league organizations. And after I retired, I started my own facility. Now, obviously, as you mentioned, I'm in the sports science world every day, so trying to help facility owners like myself and the younger generation on how they can be better players and also be safer while they're doing that.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite players growing up, in Frank Thomas. He's got his son wears the gear, correct?
Yeah, Frank's a partner in the company with us, and he's an absolute advocate of it. He wears it himself every day, and so does Frankie. Frankie just signed at Auburn recently. We'll see if he actually makes it to Auburn or if he's going to go in the draft. He's an absolute stud. But those are the top players at IMG are rocking all the gear. But there's a lot of kids now. We found that we were solving problems at the Olympic and the pro level, but those problems a lot of times started at the younger ages. And so we've moved down into that more general mass market, into the facility world, into the organizational world, so that we can just get the information that we've developed with the Mayo Clinic, Walter Reed Hospital, all the top doctors in the world, and movement people. All that information that we've accrued over the last decade is what we're trying to share with the younger generation now and pay it forward.
Yeah, it's definitely worked. We have a few of our younger players wearing them, and then I wear mine pretty much daily. And I'm telling you, it's helped my back out. It's helped my posture out. I'm not sitting great in my chair right now, but the legs, the hips, and so, anyways, I did want to talk about Michigan, the University of Michigan, and this is the first time for me, so I wanted to bring some trivia into this and see how well versed you are in the University of Michigan baseball. I guess go Big Blue. The Big House is a special place, but this is a first for me. So there are 4 players in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame that attended the University of Michigan. Can you name them?
Put me on the spot right away. Well, Larkin is one. Um, Man, you're killing me. You put me on the spot. I don't know that I can give you another one.
2 of them, I'll give you a hint, played in St. Louis.
Oh man,
One for
Matheny didn't
one
get
for
in,
the
did he?
Browns. One for the Browns, so we're talking a long time ago. And also, obviously, a great. He's a Hall of Famer. And the other one was a backstop for the
Did
Cardinals.
Matheny get into the Hall of Fame?
No,
You got me.
Ted Simmons.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, George Sisler. That was the
See, I
2
got to
St.
know
Louis
these.
guys for the Browns. And Charlie Gehringer. Never even heard of that name until I looked that up.
See, I would have never got that. Sisler, I should have got.
Yeah, I thought for sure that would be the one that you would get, just because of his name. All right, this I had to dig for. I could be wrong, but the second one is another Wolverine alum has who pitched in the big leagues, who also threw a no hitter in the big leagues.
Hmm. Did Rich Hill get one?
Nope.
A no hitter?
I didn't see a no hitter on Rich Hill. I did look. Guys
He's just
played
still
for
able to throw miraculously when I hope I can be that athletic still when I'm his age. That's unbelievable what he's doing. I'm trying to think now. Let's see. What do you got?
California Angel.
Oh, Abbott.
There you go, New
Of
York
course.
Yankee,
Very
Jim Abbott.
yes. Yes.
I,
He's a
I had
great
to look
guy, by
that
the way.
up. Yeah, I had to look that up because I never really looked at Michigan as a baseball uh, college, obviously with how much football's on there. Man, and the University of Michigan has had some really good players. I mean, they have, I think, 150 or something total have played in the major leagues. I could be wrong. I saw 98 hitting stats and like 50 something pitching stats, and I know like guys like George Sisler had pitched some and hit some in the big leagues, and there's some guys that has some obviously big time tenure, and shockingly a lot of Cardinals and then a lot of Cincinnati Reds. There's a
Well, yeah,
lot of
you
Reds
had
that
in
played.
1990, for the World Series, you had Sabo at third, Larkin at short, obviously, and then Hal Morris was at first. That was 3 out of the 4 infielders were Michigan alums.
Right. And I did not know that Barry Larkin went to the University of Michigan. So I learned something by trying to create trivia. But anyways, man, it's something new that I wanted to do just because I don't think enough young people or even middle-aged adults really pay attention to kind of the history of the game. So I kind of wanted to bring up a little bit of that, and I mean, obviously at a big school like that, it can get difficult to know the names that come through that town. But I want to just kind of start today. You're a facility owner. You've played professional baseball. You played at a high level. You played for the Midland team. Is that correct? You played with Midland, and they were the
Hmm.
Redskins back then, correct?
Yeah, and I think they're holding on to that stubbornly. I think they're still hanging on to that name. So I don't think they've come off of that at the top level. At least the 18-year-old team, I think, still goes by the Redskins. Yeah.
I got you. And thinking about kind of the current state of youth sports, you're in it, right? You have the lessons, the organizational side, team side, stuff like that. And there's this thing, this pay to play kind of mindset, right? We pay to travel, pay to play. Is this model really producing better developed athletes in the current state that we're in, or are we just kind of really rewarding folks that can afford baseball right now?
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, I think that these kids now are playing and have more exposure to the game than we did as kids. That seems to be an 11-month a year, if not a 12-month a year sport. At least in the facility that I have, there's teams that rent the place out all year long, and so from a volume standpoint, I think these kids are getting able or being able to play a lot more than they used to. I know, we were busy playing other sports, doing other things, hanging out with our friends, whereas these kids are, it seems to be in the facility a lot more than they used to be. At the same time, you look at, other models around the world, like the Dominican guys in Puerto Rico, they're doing it too, but they're doing it a different way. It's almost less structured where, they're down there playing, pickle all day long, working on, rundowns and hitting balls with a stick. And, it seems to be translating a little bit more to me than what we're doing over here. And so, I try to give the kids the leeway to be an athlete in my training. Let them move as they are intended to move. I see a lot of coaches try to change kids too early or try to make it a box, put them in a box and say you have to be this guy or you are this guy, especially positionally where, a lot of kids, I'll ask them, they'll be 8 or 9 years old. Well, what position do you play? Well, I play first base. Well, what else? Well, I just play first base for my team. So, from a developmental standpoint, it's like, well, if you're 8, 9, 10, 11, even, why aren't you playing other positions? And I think that's where you run into, the trophy chasers and the ring chasers. It's like, well, that's great. At 8U, you were 56-0, but what did you get better at? And so that systemically, I think that's an issue for us.
Yeah, do you think because of that kind of status, you think it's much harder to find talent right now? I think baseball is in a really good place, right? I think we have so much data, so much information, so many tools, but I feel like it's hard to find the work ethic, that kind of uh, um, blue collar work ethic type athlete anymore. Somebody who can adapt. Somebody who can problem solve. With kind of what you said, with all of this coaching that we have, you know, are we really finding the real talent, or is it just the people who can afford it? Like I'm in this game too, right? So I do lessons, I do the organizational side and everything like that. And sometimes I think are we pricing out families, and are we truly giving everybody a real shot? And even if we sponsor an athlete or anything like that, is that enough? So is it are we truly finding all the talent? Are we literally, this is just who can afford it?
I think it's both. I think there's probably some kids out there that are missed. I've coached a couple kids in the past from, Nowheresville, Indiana, and nobody knows about them. And they played for my Midland team. And the kid comes out throwing 91, 92 at 16 years old. He didn't even end up going to play in college because by the time he got exposed or seen, to the degree he had already, he was over it. And so I think there's definitely some kids out there that are probably looked over, missed. I think the barrier to entry is definitely a little bit too high. And I love all the companies and what they're doing because PG and PBR and those types have done a lot for kids. But at the same time, there's also some kids that flat out can't afford to do all of those. And so, I wish there was another system or another methodology in which they could get seen in a different way. And maybe that's through the teams and the organizations, and like you're saying, sponsoring players. When I was playing in high school, I was 5'11", maybe 150, and it's like, I was told if you can play, they'll find you. And I got lucky. I mean, Michigan saw me on a Sunday afternoon in a fall ball game at Thomas More College in Kentucky. And, that would not happen today. Michigan would not be at a random fall ball game in Kentucky just to see one player. They just wouldn't do that these days. And so, I feel lucky and grateful for, the time in which I came through. And we always joke around now. It's like, today, would I have even been given that chance with that body type, that frame, in this day and age? And I don't think I would have. I don't think I would have been seen that way.
There was something I saw about A-Rod, and someone had made a comment that said in today's baseball, A-Rod, or maybe it was him that said it, that A-Rod might not have made it in today's baseball because his family couldn't afford the game of baseball. And I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I've made it very clear on the steroids issue. This is an entertainment business, in my opinion, at the Major League Baseball level. I want them all to take it, and I want them all to hit 600-foot homers. I don't want to turn it into the WWF, or E, but I think those guys should be in the Hall of Fame. I think that Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, they saved baseball after the lockout and the stuff that was happening back then, and it just Major League Baseball turned their backs on guys like that, and um, unfortunately, we're there. But a guy like A-Rod, who said he couldn't afford, to play baseball in today's standards because of everything that is kind of required. Um, and it got me thinking about, and I'm going to pivot a little bit, and I'm going to go back to this, but with you playing at that high level, do you think that like kids nowadays specialize early to try to get to that higher level? Like earlier than high school, so like 12, 13 years old? And do you see a lot of specialization early on, with your young athletes?
Up here where I'm at, usually freshman years, the typical cutoff where they'll start making some decisions. There's a lot of guys that will make that decision after their freshman year in high school. I don't personally have too many 11 or 12-year-olds that have already, cut everything else out and are just playing baseball. One story that I can think of off the top of my head is our shortstop for Midland. He was an all-star type of player for baseball and football, and he played basketball. But he was a starting quarterback at one of the best high schools in Kentucky as a freshman, and he balled out. He did great, and but he was always suffering with lower back injuries, hip stuff, whatever. Something was going on all the time with him. And so I just looked at him and I said, I know you love to throw the football. I said, but are you going to go try to play in the NFL? And he said, well, probably not. And I said, well, if you're not, then, and what are you doing? Right? Because it is taking away from your baseball development, and you do have a real chance to go play in the major leagues. And, I'm very careful when I talk to kids about that, because I don't ever want to take them away from a sport that they love to do, but I also try to walk that line of educating them, because I could see in him that he's going to have a bright future in baseball. And so, but if you keep going down the road you're going, as far as the commitment for your body in football, that's going to take away from what you're doing on the baseball field. And so we just had a tough conversation. I listened to him and heard him out, found out what he was thinking, and so eventually he ended up quitting football. And I don't know if it was all because of our conversation, but maybe in part. And he ends up, now he's going to be a starting third baseman as a freshman in the Big 12 this year. And so, it worked out for him. And he played for the Redskins also. So, it ended up working out. But, to me, that's my job to educate him on what I see and what I know that he can do, and have that open and honest conversation. I think there needs to be more of that with coaches and players. I think a lot of these coaches in the travel circuit are more concerned with themselves, frankly, than the kid. And what is it doing for their ego? You go down to East Cobb and you're trying to win this and win that. It's like, well, is that what's best for the kid as far as getting recruited? For us in Cincinnati, we did all that. We did Hoover, we did Atlanta, we did WWBA, we did all that. At the end of the day, all the kids that, I had, I think 21 guys on our roster, and I think 20 went to college to play. And the one that didn't just wanted to go be a doctor and went to Ohio State, so he didn't. But none of those kids got recruited out of WWBA. They got recruited out of doing the best tournaments up this way. And so just trying to put these guys in the right positions to get to where they actually want to go, I think is important.
Yeah, that's knowing. That's been around the game for a while, understanding where we need to be for your style of athletes, et cetera. I try to express that to people. There's always this big chase of needing to go play in these style of tournaments. And I'm like, I've had experience where I've gone to them and haven't seen a large, coaching presence, from universities. And I've gone to these smaller events. Like we go down to the Chad Wolf Classic in Arkansas, and we were there this past year. And I mean, we had every single level down there from the even there's a NCCAA or something like that. It's the Christian um,
Yeah.
division. There was those schools that were there as well. Like I mean, literally JUCO all the way to D1, and there must have been 150 representatives plus down there, representing their universities or colleges. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna send people down here from St. Louis, from Springfield. I'm gonna say, hey, you need to go play in that Chad Wolf Classic, because that was my experience. And I think it would be in my best interest to tell, people that are coming through the high school rankings to do the same thing, because there's an opportunity there. And I think just knowing and being focused, but I also think that's an age thing, right? Like, what you're doing. If you have 30 high school baseball teams at the 17, 18 level, you're just going to be like, yeah, go here, 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 here. You're not really paying attention. That's the part of the organizations that really bother me when they're that large. And back to the specialization question, though. Um, do you like, for those families who kind of start to specialize younger, like that 12, 13 age group? Do you think that that's really pushed by the athlete, or pushed by like the parent wanting to chase these rankings that we see? That maybe they have a good player, so are they looking to for that scholarship, so they want to put them in these events, and they want to get them in the training more. Do you think that that's a parent ego thing, or do you think that's actually an athlete really pushing that at 12, 13 years old?
I think it's a combination these days. I mean, the parents are getting flooded and inundated with emails, right? I had I think a 13-year-old the other day. He's not even in high school yet, and he's getting emails from all these different colleges to come to their camps. And the dad asked me, is this real? And I was like, no. And I had to take him through the entire thing on how the camps work, why they work, when it's a good idea to start, going to camps. But I feel like the college stuff is coming quicker and quicker. A lot of the specialization that I do see at the younger age, I think that's more kid driven, where he has decided that this is really what he likes to do. I'm sure there's some influence coming from the parents also, but I think the kids, like I said, they have more access to different things in this generation than we used to. I mean, we didn't have the facilities and the hit tracks and the rapsodos, and so I think that the enjoyment for the kids comes in different ways other than just hitting the ball and throwing the ball. I think they're having fun with the hit tracks leagues, seeing how far they're hitting it, seeing how fast they're hitting it. So I think that's a great thing for our game, to a degree, as long as it doesn't get in the way of actual development. But I think it gives them a different flavor to it. We've done team practices where we'll go hit and we'll do everything, and then we'll go do PFPs, and they have no idea what they're doing. And so from a development standpoint, it's like, okay, we still have to teach them to learn the right way to play the game. And so I feel like that's important. As far as the specialization, with that, specialization to me is, okay, you may have picked your sport, but now you got to specialize within that sport to make sure that you cover everything. And I'm sure you see it in the facility. 80% or more, I'd say almost 90% of the people that come in the building, they want to hit. They want hitting lessons. They want to hit. They want to hit. They want to hit. And then you ask them, do you want to field? Or we do a lot of mental training and mental performance, as well as situational awareness, and they don't know the game itself. So they can hit the ball really far, but they don't know to tag up from second to third with nobody out, or what a hit and run means, what you can't do and what you have to do on a hit and run. So those are things that, again, I feel like you have to take a lot of time with these guys, and it takes time. A 30-minute lesson once a week is not enough time to figure out how to play the game of baseball. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, the development piece, that's something that I'm actually working towards a lot of conversation, what is actually, development. And you just talked about it. You have, your mental coaches, and you have all these things. And um, there's a lot of money being spent in this game, right? And it costs a lot. And I don't know if just because you can afford things that it's making a better athlete, like you had talked about here. In me, when I think about kind of what you just said, I feel like this is almost like a country club setting for baseball. And it's like, let's go have a practice for 30 minutes, and then we're going to go sit in a clubhouse, and we're going to have some food and hang out and talk to friends. Like, I think that stuff's cool, and you having those kinds of relationships, but we're not really building baseball players. And college, no matter what, even if they're going to PBR events and PG, and they have these high rankings, they're still looking for the team guy that's developed, the guy that understands how to hit backside, the guy that knows what baseball he needs to pull out of the park, and why are we trying to lift an up and in pitch when the ball that I hit the best is down and in? Why am I swinging at an 0 pitch that's not a ball I can hit hard? And we don't practice enough to begin with, in my opinion. And so I feel like this has just become, who can afford this game? And it's like a status thing. That's why I brought up the country club thing. It's because, like, who's going to the best country club in the area, which happens to be the best organization or the biggest organization or has the most kids or who markets the best. And I think it's kind of led to this thing to where, like, parents feel that they can say whatever they want because they've paid for this game, right? Whether it's 3,000, 4,000, 1,500, they feel like they can just spit out whatever, like they have this idea or whatever better than yours. Do you get that same feelings, like parents will just say whatever the heck they want to say because they paid?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a natural inclination to have as an adult to say I paid for this and I'm not satisfied with the service, right? If something is not up to par in their opinion and they've paid for it, I think it's a natural thing to, try to find the answer. What I always did with my teams is we had a parent meeting up front before the season started, and it was very, very, direct in terms of, the rules on how we're going to address playing time. I never really had any issues, maybe one or two here or there, but I was just very upfront with people, and I told them what the truth was going to be and how it was going to be, and I was pretty unapologetic about how we were going to operate. And when you look at our record and how we perform, there's not much that anybody could say to that, past and present. So, I just tried to lay that groundwork for parents and explain to them. I would try to help people out too, where if they were a two-way guy, or if I saw them as a pitcher, but they thought they were a two-way guy, I would try to help them on the financial side a little bit, and then make sure that we could slide them some at bats here and there when we needed to. Because again, over a period of time, who knows? That kid may be a hitter depending on where he goes to college. For our team, he wasn't going to be a hitter, but if he went to a D3 college, he could play both ways. And so I tried to accommodate those kids and just be honest and upfront with the parents from the beginning, and just talk like adults. If you have an issue, give me a call or talk to me, but we're not going to talk after games. The classic 24-hour rule, right? Like, we're going to let everything sit and digest itself. And then we're also not going to talk and communicate on text. We're going to talk on the phone, or we'll talk face to face, one or the other. That's a rule that I learned back in the day. Don't put anything in print, no promises, that kind of stuff. And just have open dialogue. I think in this day and age, technologically, it's so easy to fire off a text, right? Just with no real thought, angrily, and it just didn't work that way. So we tried to nip that in the butt from the beginning, and I try to tell them, unless your kid gets a full ride, you're paying for their college too. So you're not going to call their college coach and complain to them, because if you do, you won't be there very long. And so I try to educate them, because they don't know what they don't know. But one of my teammates in college, his parents did not know that, did not get that, and they called our college coach after a little while, and it didn't go very well. And so I always remember that, and I try to educate the parents as well, in the high school ranks, to say, hey, like, you're not, these college coaches are not talking to you on the phone about playing time, and so you just try to help them along as you go.
Yeah, that's interesting because I don't have that either. I don't really have that problem. I'm not sure that I like the 24-hour rule. I know that's pretty standard. I like addressing things right away, only because I feel like in the moment is kind of sometimes the best. If it's a really heated thing, where I know that that conversation might happen, I think I say, hey, let's have this conversation tomorrow. I think if it's pretty generic, I'm when I say generic, I'm not talking about, why did you take my son out for this mistake or whatever. Like, yeah, it was just because we swapped out players. Like, I don't have a problem saying that. But if it's one of those things where it's like, well, my son has, let's talk about this tomorrow. We just got done. Let me digest the game. Let me put my thoughts together so that I can then focus on the conversation versus all the things that I need to think about to get prepared for tomorrow. So I guess I kind of have both, but um, it's like, what I have a problem with coaching sometimes is I always address things right away. So, like, if a kid does something in the field, I will say to him, "Hey, what would you do differently next time?" Going through it, trying not to like already hurt his feelings because he made a mistake or something or whatever. I try to do it very tactful so that he understands that I'm kind of being I'm just trying to help coach him up because we don't practice enough. So I feel like a lot of times I have to develop in game when mistakes are made. Like, that's when I have to talk about it. That's when I have to bring it up. That's when I jot it down on the notepad. And everything that like I talk about after a game is literally the development side. It's never about like, hey, Jimmy did a good job because he did this or whatever. I mean, of course I address pitchers and catchers, dealing or whatever or a big hit, but for the most part, it's always the development side, right? And I
Yeah, I
just
had a. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
No, I was
No,
just
go
gonna
ahead.
say I had a when you talk about parents, I had a parent a few years back, and I had a big lefty. He's 6'7", great pitcher, 89, 91. Had some control issues though, but he had a ton of coaches out here watching him at a tournament game, and I put him out there on the front end of the tournament. It was like a Wednesday through Sunday tournament, and it was the first inning, and he just flat out didn't have it. He was all over the place. One pitch was over the catcher, the next pitch was hitting the batter, right? So he was everywhere. So I ended up taking him out after 20 pitches in the first inning. I think he recorded one out in the game, so he pitched a third of an inning, and the mom went nuts on me. Absolutely, just like lost her mind. And I just explained to her, I said, look, I said, at the end of the day, I'm protecting your son because what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll him back out there in a few days and give him another opportunity. If I leave him out there to struggle, first of all, nobody's going to want him because they're watching this continuously, the circus. And I said, so what we're going to do is I took him out after 20 pitches. So basically, he just threw a bullpen today, more or less, and we're going to give him a few days rest and we're going to bring him back again so they can see him again and we'll get all these coaches back for you. And she didn't understand the logic to that. Rolled him back out there on Sunday. All the coaches came back because we asked them to come back, and so they did, and he absolutely dominated. And he ended up going D1, and he's over in your neck of the woods now, as a freshman, just killing it. And so sometimes you just have to walk them through that process and explain to them why you're doing what you're doing. And I think they do have a right to know that because they don't know what they don't know. And so when you get in situations like that, you try to educate them the best that you can. And either they're going to accept it or not. In her case, she didn't understand it at the time, but come Sunday, she was very happy about it.
When I first started coaching, that was a problem for me is understanding that people don't know what they don't know. Because
Right.
I love this game so much, so I'm fully invested into it. Baseball, softball, from the lowest to the highest parts of it, to the mental side of it, everything I am 100% invested in. And I did forget. I mean, I still do forget that sometimes people just aren't invested. I mean, I there's a player that is upper eights, um, doesn't watch baseball. Good baseball player, high IQ, does not watch the game. It drives me crazy because I thought, man, if he just watched the game, how much mentally could he be better? Because he's just, watching the game just gives you reps, right? It just gives you opportunities to learn, assuming that you're listening to the game and you're listening to the best in the world announce it and talk about, mistakes or things like that, and I forget that people, uh, you know, in general, I think baseball is boring. Um, in watching it on television, um, I have to watch the game and look for the managerial moves. The I try to, as a hitter, if I'm competing and there's a dog on the mound, I'm going, okay, he just started me off here. Next pitch is what? Boom. Why did you take that fastball right down the middle? And you're looking off speed, in this situation. And I'm calling those things out before the game. That's for me where it becomes fun. I do think the game is kind of boring in general because there's not a lot going on. But when you've played it at a high level, you know that there's a lot going on. Um, so I think to the average fan, it's not a extremely exciting game like maybe football might be or hockey. I mean, it's not as boring as NASCAR, but um, you know, the NASCAR's
round,
pretty
round
boring,
and round, round and round.
is it right? And I one of the questions I did want to ask, just because again, you play D1, you played at a high level prior to that. Obviously, you were a good high school athlete, played professional baseball, pretty close, and you've discussed like where we didn't have all these things. I'm 7 years older than you, so you're not too much younger than me. Where some of this stuff still mattered, but we went outside, played catch, we played football, we played hockey, we did everything we could in the streets. We had to run out of the street when a car came, or went down the local high school and played wiffle ball, did kickball, all the things that helped us become a well-rounded athlete. And nowadays, it seems like we have a coach for private hitting, so I'm gonna pick on us a little bit, right? Because we're instructors and owners. We have a hitting guy, we have a mental guy, because you said you do mental, we do mental stuff too. You have a base running guy, you have a fielding guy, you have a pitching guy, you have and you have them all for softball to go with it. And are we actually like really creating a better baseball player, or are we creating a player that is more dependent on the instruction versus a player that can self-organize or a player that can problem solve? I know that you've brought this up and saying that's what you do for your teams. It's what I do for my teams. Is I try to let the player figure it out. There's not a rule to my hitting. I don't care how you stand in a box. I do care how you pull the baseball, though. I don't want it on the ground. I want it in the air, right? So if and then I want it backside ground ball, and that's my thought process of telling my kids what to do. Not that it actually happens all the time. That's not how it works, but I just want them to organize that way, to self-organize when they've made mistakes. How do they overcome those things? Being uncomfortable will make you a better player. And all this instruction that we're doing, all this information that we're giving, are we truly making a better player? And for the long term of baseball, not in the short term, because I do believe that we're in a good place for baseball, right? I think we've never had better athletes. So the strength and conditioning is insane, right? The technology is insane. But I cannot have a conversation about baseball knowledge or history. And you brought it up earlier, tagging from second to third when the ball gets hit in the air to the right side. Why do I have to say that to a 17-year-old kid? Baffles me. And so are we really like truly making a better baseball player, or are we just kind of teaching these kids to be dependent so that we can keep turning them over?
Yeah, I mean, I think generically, I think the skill sets are way better, right? Because they are hitting their marks on their pitching guy and their hitting guy. So I think they understand the swing more. For me, it was just get up there and swing and look for certain pitches and certain counts, and that was about the extent of it, right? It's like, okay, I know I have to do a couple things mechanically to be successful, and then they pretty much would turn us loose. And so I think these days with all the 4D motion capture, all the tech, I think the kids understand their swings better. Does that paralyze them at times? Maybe, but I think it definitely detracts from the overall baseball IQ, where like where can you not hit a hit and run? Well, you can't hit it up the middle because somebody's gonna be standing right there. Okay, I was just talking about this with a kid the other day. Why would you not get a hit and run with two outs? And the kid didn't know. and he's a junior in high school. Well, if you hit and run with 2 outs and you just throw your bat out to hit the ball and you roll over to short, the inning's over, right? That's why. Oh yeah. Like I feel like we need to spend more time talking about the intricacies of the game because I think, like I said, I think the skill set of the players is way better. I mean, I have a son who's a freshman in college. Um, he's at a D3 in Northern Ohio, and he's telling me there's guys that throw low to mid 90s in D3 on his team, but there's also guys that throw 78 to 81. Well, that doesn't matter. Can you get the guys out or not? Do you understand how to set up hitters? I met Tommy John a number of years ago, and he was talking about how when he coached, he made his players, his pitchers specifically, chart their inning after the inning. So they would come in after they got their 3 outs, and he would have to go. They would have to go back on a chart and write, pitch type, pitch location. And his explanation was, Jay, how can I expect that kid to get that same kid out again the next time he comes up if he doesn't even remember how he got him out this time? And so just trying to stimulate those guys in their minds to play the game on a smarter IQ level versus just throwing the ball past somebody.
I'm going to make sure that Drew takes what you just said about Tommy John and cuts that and makes it a small clip because, we have charting, right? We do all of these things. I'm sure you do this for your team, your older kids. And I think about this all the time. They'll chart, but the pitcher will never come in the dugout and go over to the chart and talk to anybody about it. And it's 9 times out of 10 because there's no coach in there because we don't have enough coaches on the field to begin with. And he's looking at it with no real thoughts,
Right.
and again, that's why I went back to the dependency thing. And I really, really loved that you brought that up about Tommy John saying he had his pitcher go back in and chart because Pete Rose and made a quote about his hitting. And he goes, "You might have got me out the first time, but I have 27 at bats in a game." Clearly never had 27 at bats in a game. He only had 4 plate appearances in that game. But in his mind, he literally was learning from everybody's at bats and how he was
Right.
getting pitched to in certain situations. And he can memorize that. And that's why he's our hits leader with what, 4,156 or whatever it is. And, you know, to me, that's like, hitting a baseball is hard. We all know that. I think I don't think it's hard. I think the consistency might be hard, might be difficult. I think it's hard because the mental side of it's very tough when you barrel a ball and you end up getting into an out. It's frustrating because you can have a blue duck fart and you get a hit and it's just like, man, I'm this, and I'm this kind of player, and and all of a sudden hitting's hard. um, it is difficult. I understand it is difficult to hit a ball, but if you just have fun and you accept and learn, I think it becomes a fun thing to do. And I just don't see like having conversations with a kid. I'm like, okay, you've made the same mistake 3 times in the game. You went up
Right.
swinging at a first pitch strike that's at your neck because you like the ball up in the zone, but that's too far up. When are you going to tunnel that ball in? And I feel like I've done a bad job because I haven't practiced that. I haven't charted that, or I haven't, whatever. At some point, when do players become responsible for their approach? I mean, I tell them all the time, we have practices that we're only allowed to swing at certain pitches, and they got to say what zone they're looking in. I'll feed like 6 in a row right there. Then I'll throw one up and away and they'll swing at it. And there's a consequence for it. Whether that's your round is over or, something crazy might happen. I don't like make them run. That's nothing crazy. But there's got to be some sort of consequence, right? You get yourself out in a game like that. And I literally have kids say, "Coach, it was a strike." I don't give a crap. That's not a ball you can hit hard. Do you know what you can hit hard?
Right.
Why are you
Right.
rolling over this baseball? When because I think 90% of the game should be focused up the middle right side. And I'm not
Hmm.
asking my players to hit the ball middle right side, but I always thought it helped me understand hitting the ball middle right side, I can still pull the baseball. And for me, it was like, well, I'm a dead pull hitter. Well, I can pull a middle pitch and hit it in left field for a single. I'm
Yeah.
not going to hit that ball out of the park.
Right.
So instead, I would just slap the barrel out there, catch it, and get me a nice little single. And next time they would move that pitch in, I'd hit it out or for a double. And at least that's what I was trying to set up in my mind. I did that for somehow at a young age. Nobody ever taught me that, except for how much I watched the game on TV and then watching athletes talk about it on ESPN. And then, well, I guess I was coached up on it, but I just, I've never had 10 coaches in a dugout helping me out, five, or even in my coaching or even in high school. One of the biggest rosters we ever had was when I was at a local high school here, Timberland. We might have had six coaches in the dugout at times. Man,
Hmm.
things was just sharp. And when a kid didn't have it, he would go to his pitching guy. We would figure it out. We'd have those conversations. We would have, what were you thinking in your at bats and building that IQ. And they got to play college ball. I just don't think we have it. And do you think, like, how can you get that back? And I need you to think about like your average athlete hat, not the kind of kids that you coach. How do we get the average athlete and parent family to buy in to really focusing on maybe building the IQ more than anything else?
Yeah, I think they've got to look internally a little more than externally, right? So, like, the technology is prevalent now in almost every facility you walk in. And one of the rules that I have is you don't get to use my technology unless you were on time and you picked a good pitch. Why are we looking at the iPad? Why are we looking at all the tech and the data of a pitch that you swung at that was over your head and you were late on? That's the problem, not anything fundamentally. You didn't pick the right pitch and you didn't put the right swing on it timing wise. They're seeing all these guys in the big leagues. They'll go back to the dugout after they're at bat. And I've talked to major league hitting coaches. They're not looking at the iPad if they weren't on time and they were in the zone. If they check those two boxes, then you can look at the fundamentals and say, okay, why did I miss that pitch? Otherwise, what's the point? I've always said to little kids, bad pitches make bad swings. There's a lot of hitters out there that had great hand-eye coordination. I was just with Todd Frazier the other night. He comes to mind immediately where, he hit some really cool balls basically off the ground. That was his talent and his hand-eye coordination and his gift. Does that mean that you should be swinging at balls of your ankles? Probably not, right? So you try to get those guys into their zone, not just the zone. I had a kid a number of years ago. He ended up going to play quarterback at Army, but he was also our four-hole hitter. And he kept getting curveballed, right? He was a big, strong kid, obviously, and so everybody knew him, and they just spun him to death. Well, finally, he got tired of it. In his senior year, he just sat curveball the entire year, the whole high school season. He just sat curveball every pitch, which goes against the textbook, right? The textbook says look fastball, just off speed, but he knew that at some point, every at bat, he was going to get a breaking ball. Whether it was quality or not is another story, but he sat there and he looked for that. And there were times where it would drive you crazy because he would take a fastball down the middle, but he committed to that approach the entire year. But that to me is, that's a sign of saying, okay, I recognize that I'm going to get this at some point. And, he did have a good eye, so that helped him. But and it didn't mean that he hit all curveballs all year. He still hit some fastballs, but he had that curveball in the front of his mind the whole at bat, every at bat of the year. And I don't think he came off of that at all. Had a great senior year, and that was it for him. But he could have phoned it in and said, "I'm just going to go through it because I'm going to Army to play football next year." But he wanted to play baseball, and that's the approach adjustment that he made, and it worked for him. Does that work for everybody? No, but I think everybody's their own entity and their own self. And like for me, I told somebody the other day, there was one year I averaged 2.3 pitches per at bat. That's not a lot, but I was hitting 1, 2, 8, or 9 in Double A, and I was getting a lot of fastballs early. So by default, I'm going to be on those early, and my bats didn't last very long. I didn't swing and miss a lot, but I was moving the baseball early in the count until they adjusted on me.
Yeah, I think that's a high level conversation for sure. I think that is just gold, kind of just speaking on like how many pitches that you had in your at bats and what you averaged, and then knowing the why. Like, so many people see that, and you might have gone like 0 for 6 and seen those same two pitches at bat, and five of those were good at bats. You know what I mean? And then the sixth one, what I mean, chalk it up because that's how the game goes, right? But I just think like people look at such the wrong details. And I think about like setting up pitchers and pitchers setting up you. You talked about the kid that was always sitting on the curveball his senior year. At what point did the pitching coaches and the other schools that were playing against him go, man, he's hit a lot of curveballs this year? Because I know information gets shared. And so it's like, well, the pitchers didn't make an adjustment. Why didn't the pitching coaches make the adjustment on this kid? And then pitch him back normal to get him off the curveball, to get him back on the curveball, because that's what makes the game fun. For me as a coach and as a player, that's what made it fun is trying to compete against somebody with the same thought process, right? And I had a big at bat late in my men's career. I think I was 40 when I hung him up. So this is my last home run that I hit. The kid comes in, warms up, high velo guy. Like he's probably 24, 25 years old, just gets released from indie ball or something like that. So he's upper eights, low nines, and he cannot find his fastball whatsoever. I'm on deck. So they just walked a guy. I'm on deck and they bring in a new arm. And so I got two guys on and it's fastball all over the place. Whatever. He flips a slider. Boom, it's a strike. Flips the slider to strike. I think out of the 8 pitches he threw three sliders, all 3 strikes, all 5 fastballs or 4 fastballs and whatever else he threw, all balls. I literally walked in that up to the plate, first pitch slider, hung it, I sent it. To me, that's what made the at bat awesome. Is I guessed right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just he come up to me after the game and goes, it wasn't that bad of a pitch. That's what he said to me. And I go, man, listen, you threw every single slider for a strike and all the other pitches you missed. And he's like, I only got 8. And I said, I was watching you in the dugout warm up. Or not in the dugout, but in the bullpen warming up. I go, you couldn't locate your heater.
Right. Right.
And it's like for me, that's what made the game fun. And how do we get back to that though? And with the limited numbers of practices, I don't know that it'll ever happen. I will continue to do my darndest, of trying. And just like last night with my 9U team, I coach a 9U team. We had kids swinging and missing, and I went, man, good job. I was clapping my hands because they were ready when the ball come out of the machine, ready when the ball come out of the hand on front on flips and over the top. They were ready to swing at ball release, and that's all I really was saying to them. I didn't talk about how ugly the swing was or how ugly the mechanic was. They're 9. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to do that yet. They got to get a little older and more mature, but um, it's just like be ready to go. And then when they were late and they swung and missed, I said something to them and I said, guys, out of the machine. As soon as that ball comes out, we're ready to go. We got to be ready to hit. I didn't talk about their load. I did
Right.
ask if
Right.
they knew what I meant by it, and then I had to stop practice and make sure that everybody knew what I was talking about. And I'm trying to get them to learn that I'm talking to everybody if I'm talking to one, especially in the team setting, because you can't do individual instruction in a team setting, which parents need to really understand that piece. I don't know if you've
Mhm.
ever had a problem with that, but I've got parents that be like, "Well, you don't talk to my kid during practice." I go, "I don't talk to anybody. You want one-on-one stuff? Go find yourself a one-on-one coach." I actually don't do one-on-one instruction much anymore. I don't know how you feel about one-on-one instruction, but I like to provide the complete program. So I want it all. So if you're going to do hitting, you're going to do hitting with me, pitching with me, strength and conditioning, mental, whatever. I want it all in one spot. I don't even care if you play for me or not, but that's kind of where I'm at. But man, this one's been good. I'm trying to go down a road of trying to educate just families and parents, and then I know that we kind of picked on parents a little bit, or at least I did, and saying this country club setting or whatever. But I truly think as good as we are as athletes, I think development wise, I don't think we're close to what it was like just maybe 15 years ago. I mean, my 30-year-old daughter, I think, can run circles around some of these younger softball players because they just don't have an idea of how to play the game. but their swing is so much better than my daughter's. The way that they throw so much harder than my daughter's, but yet they can't get outs because they can't throw the ball and hit her in the chest. You know what I mean? And it's just like we miss those fundamentals, and I don't think we hold enough standards. I don't know if it's too many teams, too many pay to play
Well,
kind of
I'm glad
things.
that you brought up the practice thing again, because somebody told me years ago that, and I still think it's true and probably getting truer by the year, is that football players, and take high school football, those guys live for Friday night, because that's all they get is Friday night. They get one game a week to go out there and ball, and that's it. And everything, and they're practicing every day leading up to Friday night, and everything revolves around what did you do on Friday night. Whereas in our circumstance, you're playing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe multiple games in one day, and then you take Monday off, and then Tuesday you're not doing anything. We used to practice every Tuesday. We would practice every Tuesday, and if we weren't playing until Friday, we would also practice on Thursday to get skill work, like you're talking about, baseball IQ, situational, PFPs, first and third defense, bunt defense, making them well rounded. And I think that the football players really appreciate the game itself more than baseball guys because of the volume. You get 10 games a year to go out there and ball, and that's it. And there is no summer games and anything else to go with it. That's what you get, is you get that small sample of 10 games, 12, 13 if you're in the playoffs, and that's all you get. And so as a result, I feel like the kids in football really appreciate their time within the game itself more than baseball guys. How do we get more practices to where we can enjoy the game more or value the game more? I'm not sure how you do that with the conglomerate and the system that we're in now. But it's something I'd love to see, is putting more value on practices. And it's funny too that you brought up country club, because there's no way we could even make this up. But a few years back when I coached high school, we were struggling as a group. The team was really struggling. I'm just an assistant guy, or used to be. And I don't talk a lot, but when I talk, they listen. They obviously know where I played and what I did and all that. But I literally told them, I said, this is not a country club. And I use those words exact. I said, we're not here to lounge around and take our pants off right after the game and walk out to the car in sandals. Like, that's not what we're here for, and that's not what we're doing. And they looked at me like I had five heads. There was one football guy on that team that ran with that message, and then it became like a joke the rest of the year, and I don't think they lost a game the rest of the year.
Man,
So sometimes you just got to get in them a little bit and let them know, like, here's what the expectations are, and here's what we're trying to do. We're not here just for just to check the box.
I love that. Drew, that's another one I need you to clip there. The football story really hits home, being a football player, and having the chance to to do that in college as well with baseball. And it hits hard because, when I do think there's a solution to baseball if the organizations and the parents can come together and say, we can play less and practice more. I think that's why the Latin athletes are taking over. I think that's why we see the Japanese or having some success that they're having, is the time that they spend practicing versus the time they spend playing. American athletes are sports. It seems like all they care about is play, 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 and there's none of the other stuff, right? Like the things that we need the most. I
Yeah.
think that's a huge miss.
The other thing that drives me nuts is time limits in summer games. So like one of my pet peeves is knowing that when a high school kid plays his first high school baseball game, a lot of times that's his first time playing a full 7 inning game, because of the circuit that they've been on, and they've got an hour 45 to get 6 or 7 innings in, and the game just ends when the clock ends, and they don't truly understand what it takes to get through an entire baseball game for 7 innings because they've never had to. That's another pet peeve of mine, because obviously these companies, they've got to get their games in and stay on schedule, and so there's the time limit factor. And oh, God forbid that it rains, right? And so now you got an hour and a half to play as many innings as you can, and these kids aren't getting a full baseball game where maybe you're up one in the seventh, and you never have to encounter that struggle or that pressure because the time's up. And so we went. Well, you didn't really win. The other guys just ran out of time. Where can you find areas to install that pressure situation? Well, that's practice, live drills, things for time. We used to do ground balls on the clock. We very rarely took a ground ball that wasn't on the clock because you're not fielding any ground balls in a game that you're not on a clock for. So we have to practice it that way. And it goes back to football again. Everything in football is designed to be done. Obviously they're not in pads all the time now or tackled as much as they used to, but the drills are ran more with purpose than I feel like baseball drills are. And so, I would love to see, instances in where we can install pressure situations on guys so they can get used to it.
Man, I just was going to say they don't have an idea on how to close a game out because you don't have to. It's
Yep.
drop dead times. There's, again, this can go on forever here. The tournament companies have to do what they have to do. I get it. We don't play for anything anymore. You go to a random tournament and sure, you might win it, so you get a little bit of a bragging right. I don't know how many people even 5, 6 years down the road even remember that. But I can remember playing for a district when I played Legion baseball. I had to play for a zone. I had to do certain things to get to the next step, right? You had to win one thing to get to the next thing, and then you had to win that thing to get to the national tournament. Instead, you can just go how much ever it is. If you can afford it, and you charge your families, you get to go, and there's nothing there to play for. I that bothers me because there's just no desires. And then, like you said, you played. I don't mind the doubleheader side of things, but again, you have to play within a time constraint. What happens if you got a team that puts up 6 on you, and it just happened to be a blow up inning, but that's going to come on their end because it usually happens in youth sports that kind of a back and forth there, a couple good innings, a couple bad innings, and whatever. And it's like, well, I didn't get my chance to have my bad inning. What could have happened, if the time ran out? And kind of speaking of time, it's an hour-long show. So, Jason, I appreciate taking your time out of your day to come on here, hop on here, talk baseball. There was a lot said today that I think that is great for folks to hear, athletes to hear. I think there's a big disparity between Latin athletes and American athletes on expectations and how we train and what we go through. You mentioned it in football being the desire to play one night a week, and your season's so short, so you look forward to the Friday night lights. And I think that information is a lot, and I hope that folks watch this and we clip the right parts for social media impact. But Jason, how can our folks over here in the St. Louis, St. Charles County area, how can we follow you, Kilo Gear, and let our fans know how we can follow you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at jchris6, Jay Chris6, and then Kilo Gear link is below. And again, with the Kilo Gear stuff, guys, it is about making your athlete not only the stronger and better version of themselves, but also safer. So we're very big in the neuroscience and then also the connective tissue side of things. So you get all the fun things that we like from the metric standpoint, the exit velo, the throwing velo, all that stuff goes up. However, their connective tissue and their tendons and their ligaments, they're going to be stronger and better also. So we hopefully avoid that injury risk as well. And that's at Kilo Gear Pro.
March 28th. We're hoping that's a big day for us. We're going to have a camp. We're going to have a little bit of a like spring training kind of vibe. Jay's going to come down to St. Louis, do a camp with us. We're going to have some former professionals there. Justin Dearden, who's been on the show, he's a former Astro, COVID pick, so he didn't get drafted, but he did get picked up and had a nice little success there, and maybe some other guys that are from this area. So March 28th, folks, we're going to have a fun little spring training camp, all-day camp again. We might even address some of the dad coaching things with YBM. So make sure you look for that over there at the Hitting Zones Facebook page. And then, of course, on TikTok. We'll talk about it on TikTok. Jason, I appreciate you, man. Really, really love the show today, and you guys have a great day over there at your facility in KG today.
Hey, absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me.